Hey, once again, Satanico here for Godlovescomics! And I've got a single box opening that I will try to make as quick as possible because I've dragged on too long on these videos. This is the box. Here you go, right here. And it's only got a few items in it, but I think they're actually pretty cool items. These are eBay scores, even though these were not the most... These are not usually in demand comics, but I picked them up for a pretty specific reason. One was definitely to just add to my collection because I really have always wanted it. And the other two I'm hoping to flip, make a tiny bit of money off them, just because I'll explain as we go along. Here's the package right here, and it's well packaged. I like this packaging, actually. He's got bubble wrap. He's just got a single piece of tape. It's unlike the travesty that I don't even know if I uploaded that video yet, but I got a pretty good collection of Bronze Age, well, just a small little comics haul of Bronze Age, but the guy taped the things to absolute pieces. It was almost impossible to get into it without ripping the comics themselves apart. It's pretty frustrating. This is easy enough. Okay, alright, got them free and easy. And let's see, what shall I talk about first? Okay, I guess I'll talk about this one first. Slide these over here without knocking the camera out of the way. And there it is. Son of Origins of Marvel Comics. An all-time classic. Fireside book, $6.95 for this big, thick, square-bound book that was pretty unique at the time. It is a collection, of course, of early Marvel. And I've had this book in my collection for a long time. I've got one in very nice condition. I saw this one for sale and for auction, I should say, from this guy, and it looked like it was in really nice condition, and it still does. Might not have a little bit of, can't tell, a little bit of soiling or something at the very top, but I mean, for a white cover, I forget, is this book from 1976? Not quite sure, but I actually like this one better than the Origins of Marvel Comics. I actually need the Origins because I've had that. I've had it since I was a little child. But that one got really, first of all, it got read really heavily and creased really badly. And secondly, I think it even got caught in a hurricane. And so the back cover just got basically destroyed. Meanwhile, I have a really nice copy of this one already that I've had also since I was a child that somehow I maintained. And so I'm hoping to sell this one. I think I got this for about $15, which is actually pretty damn good because nowadays these goes for, generally, especially in this condition, 40, 45 sometimes. It just depends, but I think I got a good deal on it, and it had a pretty fair amount of bids, but obviously nobody was going too high on this. And we'll crack this open and take a quick look at it. The thing about Son of Origins is I think Son of Origins is vastly better than the original Origins. The original Origins had, of course, classic origins of the Avengers, I think the Hulk and Iron Man, but it was not really Jack Kirby's best work. He hadn't quite hit his stride yet with, sort of the classic Marvel and, the classic Marvel of the mid-'60s or whatever, when he was just doing incredible stuff with Stan Lee on Fantastic Four and subsequently the Avengers and X-Men. I didn't really like his early stuff on Avengers or X-Men that much. It's a little bit clumsy, but I mean, once he hit his stride, specifically I would say Fantastic Four and Thor were unbelievably beautiful. But this actually has, early X-Men story. It's been a long time since I've looked at this book, actually, so this is, I guess, the first X-Men, and which is not really some of my favorite art from Jack Kirby, but it's still obviously charming, and you can see this is not, I remember the scene. I like the scene where the Hulk is juggling an elephant, a horse, it looks like a seal. It's pretty great scene, and this art is enjoyable enough, but really not Kirby at his best. But this actually had, see this Gene Colan artwork with Frank Giacoya, and I think it also has John Buscema. I like this work as well. This is Don Heck, of all people. But, and then we get into some later stuff from really John Buscema at the peak of his powers when he was doing Silver Surfer. Just did absolutely beautiful work. Look at that. Look at that, beautiful panel there. Can manipulate it for the camera since I'm not moving the camera around. I have a stable camera, as you can see. But and this is Gene Colan again. The Watcher. But I just feel like this issue, and this is a Daredevil story, I feel like this issue had a little bit better artwork than the first one. And then I think the Bring On the Bad Guys had even better artwork. That's the one I'm remembering. That also had Mephisto in it. Another John Buscema masterpiece. I think this is Daredevil by Wally Wood, I do believe. There are Bill Everett. Why am I thinking? Wally Wood, I think... Did Wally Wood do the cover to this? I'm sorry if I know that's such incredibly obvious information, but of course Bill Everett did these early Daredevils. But anyway, maybe it's Bring On the Bad Guys I'm thinking had even better artwork, even though, of course, you can see this was one of the great Buscema stories, so I really love this this phase. Buscema was always good. He was just an amazing draftsman. But I think his best work really came during this period. I mean, there was some later stuff where sometimes he seemed like he phoned it in, or he was just doing really rough. I mean, his pencils were still beautiful, but, really fast pencils, and then just leaving it to the inkers. When he had great inkers who were also great pencilers, like Ernie Chan, the stuff still looked amazing. When he had maybe lesser inkers, or maybe just got a little too loose, the stuff just didn't look quite the same. It just didn't carry the same power. But this is Buscema and Joe Sinnott, and this is just masterful stuff. Beautiful. One of the best one of the best first issues that you're going to find from any age, really, but certainly the Bronze or Silver Age. One of the best origin issues and first issues with the Silver Surfer in terms of artwork. So that is Son of Origins, and I'm really happy. Okay, this condition is really nice. Still nice and white. That's the thing with these white covers. Nice and clean. I forget. Check what year this was. Yeah, 1975. I said 76, so I was at least pretty close on that, and I'm terrible with dates. And then you can see the back cover is also very nice. Spine, very nice. It's a little bit of a reading crease, which is perfectly fine. So I'm hoping to just go ahead and sell this book. And next up is, let's go with this one. And this is going to go into something a little more complicated, or a little more convoluted. The Price by Jim Starlin. Now, Metamorphosis Odyssey book. Now, I do not know this book. I've never read it. I've never opened it. I don't know if I ever even saw it when it came out. But the reason I bought this book, and again, I think I paid $7.50 or something for this. Something very cheap. And I see again that these are selling for more than that, but considerably more than that. But in general, it just really depends on whether someone's looking for this book, which most people would not be. Jim Starlin's a little bit hotter now because Jim Starlin, of course, is the creator of Thanos, who you may have heard of, and Drax the Destroyer, Gamora. So he created not only the central villain for the latest Avengers Infinity Wars, but also the central villains for the Guardians of the Galaxy. And he also co-created Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, which is a comic I really liked when I was a child. So somebody might not be specifically looking for this book, but first of all, I got it cheaply. Secondly, it's in beautiful condition. I don't know if it shows on this, but it's got to be, it really looks like it's near mint. It looks like it's unread. And so I purchased this to add to what I intended already to bundle together to sell. Some comics that I've had in my collection that I actually purchased off the newsstand that I've had for years. I never really cared for the title that much, and I thought it might be a good time to unload them, even though I'll miss them a little bit. But here you go. The first appearance of Dreadstar is an epic #3 with a beautiful Paul Gulacy cover. This is probably the best issue of Epic as well. Because it's got Michael Moorcock, The Dreaming City, which I think is illustrated by P. Craig Russell, who was really into the Michael Moorcock stuff at the time, Elric and stuff like that. So, and then it's got a Paul Gulacy story. I was really in love with Paul Gulacy, who, by the way, actually was one of the definitive artists on Master of Kung Fu. And then, of course, it has Jim Starlin's Dreadstar. And this issue, I thought it was probably in better condition than it actually is. It's in really nice condition. The spine is great. Everything's great. It's just got a little bit of foxing along the white. I never had like magazine-sized bags. And so this comic has just been sitting in a drawer, or maybe in a, I think it was in a drawer because it was a little too big for a comic box. And so it's been sitting there since 1980, or, close, which unbelievably is almost 40 years ago. That is insane. But that being said, that's the first appearance of Dreadstar. This is, and it's called the Metamorphosis Saga. And this is part of the Metamorphosis Saga, even though I think Dreadstar only appears in this very briefly. But it's also Jim Starlin, can be bunched together. And then you have this, which also has Dreadstar. This is number 4, I do believe. Howard Chaykin cover. And I think in the first appearance, he was in black and white, just kind of like a black and white wash type thing. And in the second appearance, or at least in this follow-up, he is in full color. And I actually like the art here a little bit better than I remember. You can see there. Some really nice artwork, but Dreadstar was not, and this basically is, this character is basically a self-portrait of Jim Starlin. He looks exactly like this. Which is pretty typical. Artists always kind of insert themselves into their work at some point. So, Jim Starlin, I think his best work was really with Warlock. And it was a little bit before my time, even though I have these old books that I bought, that I got from newsstands and things. I don't remember, I just remember Jim Starlin being a big name, and then really a huge name during the 70s and maybe early 80s. And Warlock was like his big title. I remember seeing covers for it. I remember thinking it was, great artwork at the time. And I know that was that point when comics were valued more for the artist than they were for first appearances or for keys. And so, you know, a Jim Starlin art, you know, raised the value of a comic just like Barry Windsor Smith art did or Neil Adams art does. And that still is true to some extent, but of course people put so much more emphasis on keys now, which I think is stupid, but that's just the way it is. But Starlin was a Vietnam vet, and he just did some really crazy stuff. I don't know how Vietnam affected him, but you know, he came back and there was just a lot of questioning of religion. He did, you know, some crazy stuff in Warlock, you know, Pip the Troll, and some kind of religious, the Universal Church or something like that. That, you know, and a lot of questioning of authority, a lot of kind of really psychedelic shit. There was definitely some drug use or hallucinogens going on at Marvel at that time among many creators, you know, with Jim Starlin and Steve Gerber, and I'm not saying they all did drugs, but yeah, there had to be some drug in somebody imbibing something at the time, which led to a lot of amazing work, you know, and Frank Bruner and David Anthony Kraft, who was a writer. All of that stuff was going on back at that period, and that was also Jim Shooter coming on. I remember Jim Shooter doing some sort of one of his soapboxes. Sort of, he was following up as, you know, in the wake of Stan's soapbox, where he was kind of trying to maintain sort of a character for the company of Marvel. So he wrote like a soapbox editorial. I remember him specifically pointing out that Jim Starlin was driving a brand new Trans Am because that's how much money he made at Marvel, and which is kind of funny in retrospect these days, a Trans Am. But you know, you couldn't tell whether, you know, Starlin was such a great manipulator that you didn't know whether it almost could have been that he was jealous or whether he was just kind of trying to remind Starlin of what you know, how great he had it at Marvel. It's hard to say, but so anyway, I bought this. I got this cheaply. It's a beautiful copy to add to this really nice copy of Epic number 3. And then I completely forgot about this. And when I was looking up Epic number 3, I just happened to look through this and see that also it had Jim Starlin and also has Charles Vess, Children of the Stars. Charles Vess is a good artist. And then add to it Jim Starlin's Dreadstar number 1 for the Epic Comics line, which is more the pamphlet size. Beautiful copy, again, from the newsstand. Been in storage for decades. Tiny, tiny crease, maybe like 1/16 there, and then a very, very tiny one in the bottom corner. And then everything's, you know, then it's beautiful. And these were on nicer paper, so there's not really much concern about the paper turning yellow. I don't know if you can see the spine. Spine is nice. I don't see any creases or anything, so it's definitely a near mint copy. I wouldn't say it's a 9.8, but I would say it's maybe a 9.4. Then you're looking at number 2, which is probably in even better shape. The corners are perfect. The spine is perfect. I mean, it's again, extremely high grade copy. Somehow I missed number 3, and so I get number 4. And once again, this is May 1983. And this was 1980, the first appearance. And so by 1983, he had done 4 issues of Dreadstar. I don't remember how long it lasted. I kind of lost interest in it. I wasn't that enamored with the artwork. I don't think it was up to snuff of like his Warlock stuff, but you know, but it actually looks nicer in retrospect. I tend to find that's the case for most of the stuff I look back at. Now I look back at not so much with nostalgia, but maybe I think maybe a little bit more sophisticated eye. Hopefully, I would hope so. So I tend to appreciate it a lot more now. I still don't think it's up to the standard of Warlock, but, you know, it's pretty nice. It's really someone's taste. But hopefully there's some Jim Starlin fans out there, and particularly, the fact they created Dead Star, created Thanos and the Thanos revival, that someone would be interested in that. And then there is one last book, and I'm super happy to get this, especially in this condition. Look at this. This is beautiful. This is the first time I'm seeing it live. I saw it online, of course, and looked at it close up, and it's actually better than I even thought. So that's just in the bag, that little crease there. Wow, that looks pristine. That is absolutely perfect. What a beautiful copy. There are no spine ticks. The corners are absolutely perfect. This doesn't look like it's ever been read. And I've been wanting this for a while. It's not an expensive comic, and in fact, I got a great deal on this. I think I paid like $9.50 for it. And again, this wasn't. I think people bid on the Son of Origins, obviously, and I think even the Jim Starlin book, even though it only sold for about $7.50, I think people bid on that a little bit more. But this was $9.50, totally worth it. Bill Sienkiewicz. I don't know if I even need to say anything more than that. Bill Sienkiewicz did this. First of all, I'm a huge fan of Dune. I did a previous video where I opened some Dune stuff, but I just wanted this Marvel Super Special, and particularly in this condition, this condition is beautiful. This looks like it just came off the shelf. So all three of these actually are, the two magazines in particular are in just perfect condition, and Son of Origins really, really nice condition. So I'm very happy with that. There's so much to say about Dune. I'll try to keep it short, but I mean, I love the movie. It's so much better than almost any science fiction that's been made in terms of cinematic science fiction. Star Wars is an absolute joke. Star Wars is for children. And I was a child when I saw Star Wars, and I loved it. And the first Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back were really great movies, even, for adults, but it's still children's science fiction. It's, and that became really clear when George Lucas made Return of the Jedi with the Ewoks and all of that silliness. But Dune is not children's science fiction. It's science fiction for sure, but Frank Herbert's world was a lot more realized, and you don't get David Lynch to direct the movie for children. Even the child in this, Alia, even the little girl who's Paul's sister, she's creepy. You wouldn't put her in a children's movie. You might put her in Poltergeist, but or a horror movie, but you're not going to put her in a children's movie, probably. At least not the way she acts in this movie. But Bill Sienkiewicz, brilliant artist. I don't always love all of his painted stuff. Sometimes he gets a little too impressionistic. It gets a little too watery, and it lacks definition. And even then, I mean, that's from panel to panel. You'll see one page that's just unbelievable, and then the next panel or the next page may leave you a little cool or a little cold because it's just almost too undefined or a little too impressionistic. But his more surrealistic, impressionistic stuff for New Mutants, particularly when he uses pen and ink, and so it has more definition as these drawings do, it tends to just, it really pops off the page. It always just this kind of violent line, this chaotic line that he does. And, I mean, he's capable of drawing in so many different ways. Obviously, I think there's a lot of Ralph Steadman influence, and subsequently Sienkiewicz, I should say, has his own imitators, particularly, I think, most notably, somebody like Ashley Wood, who hopefully has moved on to, creating more distinctive style of his own. This, you see all kinds of great portraits in this. I have the first issue of the 3-issue miniseries. I think I have at least the second one as well, but I may have all three. I forget. But Bill Sienkiewicz is an amazing portrait artist as well. I mean, he's not just a guy who draws. You see the first issue. You see the advertisement for the first issue of Cloak and Dagger, which is pretty cool. But he's not a guy who just draws like crazy figures. He's a guy who's a really brilliant portrait artist who's really capable of drawing in any style. You see right there, like that's a portrait of Virginia Madsen, who was kind of the hot babe of the 80s, the hot blonde babe. She was that in a lot of movies, but she had a small role in Dune as Paul's mother. I think it's Paul's mother, and she's strikingly beautiful. But you can see a beautiful portrait there, and the reason I know Sienkiewicz does so many great portraits is because he does these portraits after people die. He tends to do portraits on Twitter and post them, on Twitter as social media and Facebook, and he does stunning portraits of, probably most notably for comics fans recently was Adam West, which was probably one of the ones that people love the most, but recently, but I mean, he does them of political figures, like Palestinian doctor who was killed who was killed at the border, the Israeli border recently, and then he'll do, of all kinds of blues artists or whoever has passed away. He does a portrait literally when they die. By the next day, he has this beautiful portrait done of them. That he just does this routinely, and that just shows what an artist he is, that he's capable of doing these things. They're so recognizable of the person, and yet they're not just like carbon copies of a photo. And so throughout here, in other words, he's perfect for this kind of cinematic adaptation with actors like Kyle MacLachlan, and of course there's Captain Picard, and one of my favorites in here is the Baron Harkonnen, played by the brilliant, the wonderfully bloated British actor Ian McNeice. And there he is right there. Too grotesque for a lot of critics, which shows how silly the critics and the criticism of this film was at the time. But Baron Harkonnen was just like, he was just covered in, his greasy face was covered in these pustules, and he's floating above the air, and he is just licentiously kind of jealous and admiring of Fade, beautiful Fade, who is played by Sting. Fade is like just like a malevolent, preening peacock. There's Sting there. And so Sting was perfect for the role at the time. He might not be the best actor, but he was the preening peacock of rock and roll of the 80s. He was this arrogant, beautiful lead singer, incredibly famous. And he was actually really good in this role as, his famous line, "I will kill him!" A little bit more Cockney accent than I just gave you. So Bill Sienkiewicz was a great artist for this. This is, of course, the newsprint copy. This is on nicer paper, so it looks more beautiful inside, I'm sure. And maybe I'll go into focus on this issue or read it or something at some point. But anyway, I just wanted to do this one unboxing. I've already dragged it on for 30 minutes for 3 books. I am amazing. By the way, also, there's EDM star Grimes, who you may know or you may not know, but I mean, she actually did a whole album before she was, pretty much before anybody knew who she was. She did an album called Getty Primes, which I actually like. It's a very synthesized album, but and then subsequently she now dates Elon Musk, the guy who created Tesla Motors. So I just thought that was like kind of an interesting sort of ephemera. So so that's pretty much it. The discussion of Dune. I was going to say also that Ian McNeice, who plays Baron Harkonnen, was Also, he appears in all kinds of other things, but I mean, I remember him really specifically after this. I was really excited to see him in the fantastic HBO series Rome. The first year of that was unbelievable. The second year was still really good. But he was the town crier in Rome. And what was funny is he would read the proclamations by Caesar, but even in ancient Rome, there was advertisements, which is really interesting. There was also graffiti all over the walls, a lot of lewd graffiti, but there was advertisements. So, like, a wheat producer would pay, I guess, the town crier to read an advertisement before he then read a proclamation from Caesar. So, in the TV show, he would always say, this is brought to you by the loyal brotherhood of the millet, true Roman bread for true Romans. That's what I always love. And that's the end. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.